Hey everybody, I'm so glad that you're here today. We've been talking about friendship the last few weeks, and this week I want to talk about one of the hardest things about friendships, namely when they change, when they shift, when they start to just look different. You know what I mean? A friendship that once was great suddenly isn't so great. I know I've had a few of those. I can remember kind of growing into my later elementary years, into my middle school years, and even there from my middle school years into high school years. And I had some very core friends that I was close to when I was younger that I just wasn't that close to anymore once I got into some of those older years. And that would happen periodically. There'd be seasons of change in my friendships and shifts in the dynamics throughout my growing up years. And I'm sure that you can relate to that in some way or another, because this happens with everybody. Friendships are important. I think everybody in the room can agree with that one. And how your friendships are going has the potential to either make your day great or really put a damper on things. When things in your friendships aren't going great, it can feel like your whole life is completely off balance. And when I say it feels like it's off balance, it's like your friendships are weighed on scales, all your relationships really, but there are small things that happen day to day in your friendships that can make you feel good or bad, right? If your friend doesn't show up at youth group or at school or wherever it is, it might ruin your day because you don't have them to sit with, right? That'd be negative weight on those scales. But when your friend wants to spend the whole afternoon hanging out with you, hey, day made. There's some weight on the positive scales. When your friend posts a picture on social media of everybody hanging out except for you, then that might be just about the worst thing ever. More weight on the negative scales. But when they go out of their way to do something nice for you, that's the best. More weight in the positive scales. And so on and so forth. You get the idea. Of course, we want to have only healthy, positive things to happen in our friendships, right? We want everything to shift towards the positive, all the way to go there. But as you probably know, that's not always the case. Things aren't always going to be balanced when it comes to our friendships or any of our relationships, really. And it can sometimes feel like the not so great changes in our friendships weigh us down. Maybe feel like you can't be yourself around your friend anymore. Or maybe that you can't be honest with them about how you really feel about a situation or maybe something that they've done. Or maybe you can't trust them to keep your secrets the way that you used to be able to. Or maybe they did something to you that was really hurtful and just really honestly weighs you down in a lot of areas. No matter what the reason, I think at some point most of us have felt like our friendships were unbalanced. And that can feel especially true right now in middle school. If you haven't felt that way before, then stick with me, because chances are you will experience this feeling at some point. The reality is that all relationships, but especially friendships, change. But what if I told you that changes in your friendships don't always have to be negative? What if there's a different way to think about shifts that take place in our friendships? The good news is that we aren't the first people on earth to experience this kind of friendship tension. Maybe you've never heard of this story before, but there were two great friends in the Bible named Paul and Barnabas. Now, these guys went through a big change in their friendship, and I think we can learn a lot from what they experienced. See, Paul and Barnabas were a dynamic duo in a lot of ways. I'm talking about like ride or die kinds of friends on a worldwide mission to spread the heart and message of Jesus. And honestly, they were a great team. Together, Paul and Barnabas spent most of their time traveling to start new churches. And remember, this was thousands of years ago, so there were no airplanes or great hotels to make a fun trip. Traveling back then was very different. Mostly, Paul and Barnabas walked a lot. They slept on the ground under the night sky or in the home of a stranger who had welcomed them in. There was nothing glamorous about their road trips. That might sound great for some of you, but for most people, that's not what they think of when they think of traveling. And even though they'd been traveling together for a long time as friends, Paul and Barnabas still argued from time to time. I mean, don't we all fight with our friends every once in a while? But one day they got into an argument that caused a huge change in their friendship. So check it out. Here's what happened. Sometime later, Paul said to Barnabas, "Let us go back and visit the believers in all the towns where we preach the word of the Lord and see how they're doing." Barnabas wanted to take John, also called Mark, with them, but Paul did not think it was wise to take him because he had deserted them in Pamphylia and had not continued with them in the work. That comes from Acts chapter 15, 36 through 38. So Paul and Barnabas basically had a disagreement about another friend in their friend group named John Mark. And fun fact, this is the same John Mark that a lot of scholars believe was the Mark who wrote the Gospel of Mark, but that's another story. Even though John Mark had abandoned the work that they were doing together in the past, or so it seemed according to Paul, Barnabas seemed to believe that John Mark deserved a second chance. But Paul, looking at John Mark's past actions, was certain that history would repeat itself. So Paul and Barnabas had this conflict. Two friends, two different people, two very different perspectives. So let's see what happened next. They had such a sharp disagreement that they parted company. Barnabas took Mark and sailed for Cyprus, but Paul chose Silas and left, commended by the believers to do the grace of the Lord. Did you see that one coming? Paul and Barnabas got into such a bad argument or disagreement that they decided to go their separate ways. Now that's a pretty huge deal, which in that day was an especially big deal because they didn't have things like texting where they could just keep in touch. They had to literally find each other again if they ever wanted to meet back up. But they decided to part ways. Again, huge deal. These two friends had so much history with each other, but then their relationship shifted, and Paul and Barnabas had to focus on what was best for them right then. And for them, the goal was always spreading the message of Jesus, and that never changed. In order to keep doing that, they had to take a step back from each other, and they had to choose a different path. They had to shift. And shifting their friendship didn't ruin their lives. In fact, it actually strengthened and helped develop other people's lives. Because they made that shift in their friendship, Paul and Barnabas were able to actually keep going and doing the mission, which was to share the heart of Jesus with others. And they were able to do that in two separate places now. They were able to increase their faith and increase the faith of others around them tremendously. And that's a pretty big deal as well. I'm sure it must not have been easy for Paul and Barnabas to shift their friendships in that moment, but doing so meant that they could keep moving toward the good things in the future. And what I love about that is that these two best friends didn't allow their personal disagreement to start a war between them. They didn't ask their friends to take sides. They didn't throw shade at each other. They didn't try to damage each other's mission or reputation along the way. Instead, they simply stepped back and moved on. And here's what I think we can learn from Paul and Barnabas when we find ourselves in similar situations. Okay, friends change, and that's okay. Sometimes even in our best real relationships or the friendships that we've had forever, things can shift. And at first, changes in our friendships might seem scary or bad, but that's not always the case. Sometimes changes are totally okay. We meet new people, and that's okay. We become interested in different things, and that's okay. We experience new things separately for the first time, and that's okay. We've added new friends to the group, and has made things feel different, and that's okay too. See, changes in our friendships don't always have to be negative. I mean, they can be, don't get me wrong. There's definitely wrong ways to do this, depending on the situation. But a lot of the times, it's normal for even the best friendships to change as you get older and go through new experiences. I know that's been the case in my life on several situations. So let's think back to Paul and Barnabas. They changed their relationship because they knew it would lead to good things in their lives. And I know we don't often talk about how to step back from a relationship like Paul and Barnabas did. We don't say that sometimes it's okay to step back from friendships that are no longer good for us. And we don't really talk about how it's okay to shift a friendship that just isn't working anymore. Just like Paul and Barnabas did, we can walk away from a friendship that feels unbalanced or unhealthy. And it's not wrong to take a step back from those things. It's not wrong to evaluate those friendships. I know this might seem like an unkind thing to do, but trust me, it's not. Or at least it doesn't have to be. In fact, it's actually a really good and healthy thing to be able to learn how to handle changes in your friendships, even in middle school, because for the rest of your life, you'll be in friendships that will have their ups and downs. Some of them might even come to an end. It may not always be because of something bad that happened, like someone telling a lie or hurting your feelings or making a choice that you don't agree with. Sometimes it just happens. Right? Sometimes you just have to take a step back from your friendships to realize that it's no longer right for you. I mean, when your lives have gone in different directions, when your interests change significantly, when you just need to be around someone who will encourage you towards the things that are best for you, those things aren't big, dramatic reasons for a break, but they're still important reasons to step back from a friendship that's no longer good for you. And when a friendship needs to shift, it doesn't mean that your attitude towards that person has to shift with it. You don't have to cut them off or ask your friends to ignore them, or post rude things about them on Instagram, or make slights towards them, right? Instead, it means that you can make the choice to let the friendship change while still being kind toward the other person. It doesn't have to mean that you dislike each other all of a sudden, because friends change, and that's okay. I know this may not be easy for some of you. In fact, I think changes in our friendships can be hard for all of us at times. But remember that those changes in your friendships don't have to mean bad things. Sometimes a change is necessary in order for both you and your friend to live your best lives. Sometimes you need to take a step back from a friendship that is no longer good for you, to take a step towards what is good for you. And that good for you, that's huge. That's a huge part of this. And I'm not telling you to step back from friendships just because you have one fight or a rough patch in your friendship. I'm telling you to step back when you know that a friendship isn't good for you, when you know that the relationship is off balance. It's maybe when you know it's time for a change, because they're wanting to do things that you're not cool with, or maybe their whole attitude has changed for the worst, and it's just not healthy for you to be around that. Those are the kinds of things I'm talking about here. So what do we do with this, and how do we handle friendships that need to change? I want you to start by remembering these things, okay? First of all, it's okay to think about which friendships need to change. You can think about who your real friends are, like from that chart from last week. If you missed it, go back and check that out later. So you can think about who your real friends are, who's in that inner circle, or who you'd like them to be maybe. Do you have friends in your life who maybe aren't helping you make the right choices, that aren't bringing health or wisdom to your life? Or maybe you have a friend that you might need to take a break from in order to be a better version of yourself. I know this isn't always easy, so think about a trusted adult in your life, like a small group leader or a parent, that can help you figure these things out. Chances are they can be a huge support for you, and their wisdom can help you know what the right next step might be for you in your friendships. Second thing is just remember that it's okay to step back. If you realize that you need to make a change in one of your friendships, then that's okay. Remember that just because the friendship may have to change, it doesn't mean that it has to end. Maybe the shift in your friendship simply means that you spend less time with that other person. I'm sure they can sit with you at lunch, or come to your birthday party, or hang out in your larger friend group, but maybe having them spend the night at your house, or sharing your personal secrets, or them just being in your inner circle, asking them for advice, maybe that's not such a good idea anymore. Or maybe you're in a situation where a bigger shift does need to happen. Maybe you need to have an honest conversation with a friend about how you feel. The wisdom of maybe that trusted adult in your life can help you navigate a conversation like that. Remember, the shift doesn't have to mean that they're a bad person. It just means that something in your friendship has changed, and maybe the friendship isn't the best thing for you right now. The third thing is that it's okay to be kind. In fact, it's important to be kind. You may not be the best friends anymore that you once were, or maybe the friendship looks a little different, but you can still choose to respect the other person. You can still choose to be kind in how you talk to or about that person. Handling a change in a relationship with kindness is a huge sign that you not only care about the other person, but you want what's best for them as well. You want that for them just as much as you want it for yourself. So as you consider making changes to who your real friends are right now, think about how you can handle those shifts with kindness. Remember, friends change, and that's okay. My hope today is that all of you will have the courage to let your friendships change when they need to. Because when you do, you're making a decision to move towards what is good and healthy for your life right now. Now, as we wrap up today, you're gonna have an opportunity to spend some time in your small group to talk about this in maybe some more depth. Your small group can be a safe place to talk about all this friendship stuff. In fact, your small group has the potential to be a group that you can call real friends as well. And that starts with choosing to be real with each other about real life things like friendships changing and other stuff like that. Opening up to your small group is also an opportunity for you to encourage one another, to see God in the way you handle these changes in your friendships. I hope that you'll do that today. And if you aren't already opening up to your whole group, I want to encourage you to just share with your small group leader. There's got to be somebody that you can open up to and be real with about your life. They're here to help you to navigate the complicated or changing friendships in a way that honors you and the other person. So as you get ready to head to small groups, I want you to think on this question. Do you have a friendship that probably needs to change? I want you to think about that. I know I'm not here with you. In fact, I miss being with you today. I'm up at Victory in the City today, spend some time with some newer additions to our church. But as exciting as that is, I do miss being with you all this morning. So let me go ahead and pray over you and for your time in small groups, and then you guys will be dismissed. Father, we love you. We thank you for this opportunity to come together and to just spend time studying your word, to talk through maybe some of the tough things like dynamics in friendships and changes that need to happen. I ask that you give them wisdom, give their group leaders wisdom as they navigate these conversations. And I ask that this would just be a real, authentic, and safe place for students to be themselves and to wrestle with their issues in a way that they're not judged for, but they find encouragement and strength. We love you and thank you for your son. It's in his name that we pray. Amen. Love you guys. I'll see you next week.